Hey everybody, welcome to another free Facebook Live class. My name is Patricia. I'm from Ivy League English, and today we're going to talk about something a little bit different. So usually in our Facebook Live classes, we talk about different parts of English grammar, or we learn about vocabulary, expressions, things like that. Today's class is going to be a little bit different. I want to answer a very common student question today. And a lot of times when students ask me this question, I don't spend a lot of time answering it because I feel like so many other people have answered this question already. The answer is out there already, but students keep asking me this question over and over again. And today, not today, but this week, when I posted the question, what would you like me to answer in this week's Facebook Live class? The question came up again. So it came up from more than one person too. So I decided that today I'm going to actually take a break from talking about grammar and vocabulary and expressions. Okay. If we have some time at the end of class, we can still talk about some of those things. But today, what I really want to talk to you guys about is how to improve your skills in English, how to become fluent in English. Because no matter what I do, students will not stop asking this question. So I'm just going to answer it today. And then if you have more questions after watching today's class, then you guys can ask questions and we can talk about that. All right. So for today, whoever's here in class, the first thing I'd like you guys to do is just introduce yourselves. Okay. So all you have to do is tell me what's your name and what country are you from? Okay, so to introduce yourself today, hey Luis, how are you doing? All you have to tell me today is what's your name and what country are you from? Now, I have a third question that I'd like you to answer if you want to. My third question for you today is, what is your favorite way to practice English? What is your favorite way to practice English? All right. Omar, hey, how are you doing? It's 6:20 where you are. Oh my goodness, it's really early in the morning. I'm so sorry, Omar. For me, it's 8:20 in the morning, so it's not that bad. All right, guys. So make sure you introduce yourselves. Tell me your name, tell me what country you're from, and then if you'd like, you can also tell me what is your favorite way to practice English, okay? And today we're going to talk a lot about how to study English, how to improve your English skills. So that's why I want to ask you guys that question. I want to know what you guys are already doing, because that can help me to give you guys better advice, better suggestions, if I know what kinds of things you're already doing. All right. So Omar from El Salvador, good to see you. Manaira from Bangladesh, hello. And we'll see who else introduces themselves. Now, today we're going to talk about the four different skills. Okay. There's reading, there's writing, there's listening, and there's speaking. So I'm going to talk about all four of them. We're going to talk about them one by one. The first one that we're going to talk about is reading. Okay. So while I'm talking about reading, Same, hey, how are you doing? So while I'm talking about reading, if you have specific questions about reading, go ahead and type in your questions, because after I talk a little bit about reading, then I can answer your questions. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started with reading. Now, first, I'm also going to remind you guys, one, if you like having free English classes, if this is helpful for you, please give this video a thumbs up. Okay. Also, don't forget to share this video with other people that you know who are learning English. So you can type in their name so that they realize that we have a free class going on right now. Okay. Now, Reading and listening, those are the first two skills we're going to talk about. And the reason why I want to talk about those two first is because they're the easier skills for you guys to practice. Okay? For reading, all you need is a book. For listening, all you need is something to listen to, a video, a TV show, a podcast, something like that. So the reason why I'm starting with these two is because one thing that you guys probably already know is that the best way to really get good at English is to immerse yourself in English. Immerse yourself, I know that's a tricky word, means to surround yourself with English, to have English around you all the time. When you watch things, watch them in English. When you read things, read them in English. When you write, try to write in English sometimes. You want to surround yourself in English all the time. That is the best way to get good at English. Reading and listening are easy ways to practice your English skills. So those are the things that you should spend a lot of time doing. Okay? Writing and speaking, you're probably not going to be able to spend as much time doing those things. But reading and listening, those things you can spend a lot of time doing. When you're in the house, doing chores, cleaning up, cooking, have something in the background in English. Listen to something in English while you're doing other things. All right. I'm going to take a pause here just so I can look at some of the comments. All right. So Omar, watching videos. Yes, we're going to talk about listening skills and reading skills. You can practice both of those things by watching videos. Dalim, hello. That sounds like a new name. If this is your first time here, welcome to my class. Thank you so much for coming. And Luis, yes, Luis, you've been here lots of times. So reading, okay? Reading I'm going to talk about first, because reading is even easier to practice than listening. And one of the biggest benefits of reading is that you can take your time, okay? When you're watching videos, like Omar was just saying, he likes to watch videos. When you're watching a video and you're listening, you can't control how quickly the people are talking. Okay. Yes, you can stop the video, you can rewind it, and you can play it again, but you can't control how quickly they're talking. When you read a book, you can control how fast or how slow you go. And you can go as fast or as slow as you need to be able to understand. All right. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're practicing reading is they pick something that's too hard. Okay. So now the question is, what is too hard? This is what a lot of students don't know, okay? So my suggestion for students, if you're reading, look on one page, okay? Read one page and see how many words there are on that page that you don't understand, that you have to look up, okay? If there are more than 3 to 5 words on each page, it's too hard. Okay. You shouldn't have to look up 5, 6, 7, or 8 words on every single page. You shouldn't have to do that. That's going to slow you down so much that you're just not going to be able to read a lot. Okay. You need to pick things that are a little bit easier. Pick things that you can just read for a while and you don't have to stop to look up any words. But maybe a few words on each page is okay. More than that, it's too hard and you're wasting your time. Okay. Now, another thing to remember about reading is one of the best ways for you guys to expand your vocabulary. And every student wants to expand their vocabulary. Students always tell me that they want to learn more words. How can they remember more words? They think that they don't understand people because they don't know enough words. Reading is one of the best ways for you guys to improve your vocabulary. But here's the other question I get a lot. How can I remember all of these words that I'm trying to learn? I keep forgetting them. So here's what you need to do. First of all, when you add words to your vocabulary list, and you should have a list, you should have a list of words somewhere that you are trying to learn, trying to add to your vocabulary. Okay, when you add words to that list, you have to make sure that you look at those words again. Okay? There are students who really believe that they can read a book, see a word, look it up one time, and they think they'll just remember it. They don't write it down, they don't look at it again, and then they're surprised when they forget the word. Well, guess what? If you don't practice those words, if you don't review those words, if you don't look at them the day after, the week after to make sure that you still remember them, yes, you're going to forget. Okay? So first of all, you have to make sure you write down the words, make a list, and you have to keep looking at those words again and again. The other thing that I suggest for vocabulary is you should always try to learn vocabulary from stories, okay? Maybe it's a book, maybe it's a TV show, maybe it's a movie, but it's always better to learn them from stories. Here's why. When you look at that vocabulary list, you're going to see a word. You might not remember exactly what it means, but if you think about the story that you learned that word from, then you might start to remember what was happening when they used that word. Were they talking about something scary? Was it something funny? Were they talking about an object that was really big or really small? Things like that from the story will help you to remember those words. Okay, so the two things that I suggest to help you guys learn more vocabulary, especially from reading. One, you have to write them down and you have to review them. You have to look at them a few times to make sure that you remember them. The other thing is remember the story. Try to remember what was happening when those words were used, because stories are easier to remember than lists. Okay? A list of words is really hard to remember. But if you can remember a story, and that's easier to remember, if you can remember a story that had those words in it, then it's going to be easier for you to remember what the words mean, because there's a whole story around the words. Okay, guys? So those are my suggestions for reading. Now, there's one more thing about reading that is amazing that a lot of students don't take advantage of, okay? But first, I'm going to read a couple of comments, okay? Yawar, I see you joined the class. Welcome. Ignatius from Namibia, welcome. And Omar, you also like to read the news and watch TV shows, right? Series, we call them TV shows a lot of times in English. So yes, those are all great things to do to practice your reading and your listening skills, okay? So let's talk a little bit more about reading, and then we're going to move on to listening. The last thing that's really important with your reading skills is reading is a great way to practice thinking in English, okay? Thinking in English means that you're not translating from your native language to English or from English to your native language. You're not doing that in your head. When you're thinking in English, you're seeing English words and you understand what they mean. You hear the English words and you understand what they mean without having to translate them back into your native language. So, how do you practice thinking in English using reading? I'm not going to get into that now because I already made a video about that. All right. So at the end of class, if you want to know a little bit more about how to use reading to practice thinking in English so that you can stop translating back and forth from your native language to English, I'll post that video at the end of class in the comments so you guys can learn a little bit more about that. But that is the other amazing thing about reading, is that it can really teach you how to think in English so that you don't have to do all that translating. All right. So now if you guys have more questions about reading, you can put those questions or comments in now. Okay. But I'm going to start to talk about listening because I want to make sure we have time to talk about everything today. All right. So listening skills. This is another thing that is really easy to practice. You can do it all alone. You don't need a lot of help for this. Okay. So listening skills. First, I'll tell you the biggest benefit of listening and practicing your listening skills is that you're getting used to what real English sounds like. You're getting used to connected speech. You're getting used to how Americans or other English speakers pronounce words when they're in sentences and when those sentences are all part of a story. Things are pronounced a little bit differently, okay? So that's one of the great benefits of practicing your listening skills. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen with listening skills, actually, two of the biggest mistakes, okay? Now, a lot of people, when they're practicing listening, they're using a podcast, a TV show, a movie, something like that. And if you're using something like that, you often have access to subtitles, okay? Subtitles are the words, and they appear on the screen as the people are talking. Now, here's the problem. Some people will use subtitles in their native language, okay? Not English. And that's a huge mistake. If you're using the subtitles in your native language, you have to stop doing that, okay? Because if you're looking at your native language while you're listening to English, your brain is trying to think in two different languages. And that's just gonna encourage you to translate, okay? But translating is not the best way to improve your English skills. You want to get away from translating and start to think in English. So do not use subtitles in your native language to help you when you're listening, okay? Now, the other big mistake that I've seen is the same thing that I've seen with reading. You pick something that's too hard. Okay, so when you're listening to a TV show, a movie, anything like that, don't pick something that is too hard. Don't pick something where you have to look up 50 words in order to understand what's going on. That's not going to help you. That's a waste of time. Okay, so here's a guide for you. All right, if you're listening to something that is 10 minutes long, okay? If it's 10 minutes long, you shouldn't have to look up more than 10 words. Hopefully, it's less than 10 words that you have to look up, okay? So for any 10 minutes, if you have to look up 10 words or more than 10 words, it's too hard. Find something that's easier, okay? That will actually help your skills more. If you pick something that's too hard, you're not gonna learn a lot from it. It'll take too long, okay? Now, the next thing I want to talk about is listening skills. Just like your reading skills, is a great opportunity to learn new vocabulary, okay? But here's the thing you have to remember with listening that's a little bit different than reading, okay? When you read something, most students can read it one time, and that's good. They'll learn words from it. They'll see some grammar being used that's helpful for them, and that's fine. When you're listening to things, you have to listen more than once. You have to listen more than once, okay? Now, ideally, you're gonna listen at least one time without the subtitles, just to see how much you understand. And then after that, you can listen as many times as you want with the subtitles in English, not your native language. And that will help you to understand more, okay? So when you listen to things, a lot of students miss this too. This is a common mistake. When you listen to things, you've got to listen more than once. If you really want to learn from it, you have to listen more than once. All right, guys? So again, if you have questions about reading skills or listening skills, you can put those questions in the comments, okay? You guys are really quiet today. I can see that you guys are here. I can see you, but not a lot of questions from you guys, all right? But I hope you guys find this information useful. At least tell me that. If you don't have any questions, at least tell me if this is helpful for you. All right. Oh, there we go. All right. So Jibril just said, thanks for the tips. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about listening. Now, you're going to use English subtitles. Okay. We already talked about why that's important. You want to start to think in English. You don't want to convince yourself or encourage yourself, I should say. You don't want to encourage yourself to translate. Okay. So when you use the English subtitles, you want to try to read as the characters or the people are saying the words. Okay. Now, here's the thing about using the subtitles. Most English students are better at reading than at listening. Not every student is like this, but a lot of students are like this, especially if you took English classes in school. You probably did more reading than listening. So when you're listening and you're using those subtitles, anytime you don't understand what you hear, then you're going to look for your reading skills to help you. Okay. So anytime you hear something, you don't know what it means, make sure you look at the words. Rewind if you have to, and see if you can use the words on the screen to help you understand. Now, if you still don't understand, it probably means you need to look up a word or something like that. But the whole point of using the subtitles in English is that your reading skills will help you with your listening skills. Okay? It'll also help your brain to start to understand what words in English sound like. Okay? A lot of English students know what English words look like on paper. Okay? But they don't know what they really sound like from native speakers because they haven't listened to native speakers a lot. Okay, so that's another thing that's really great about using the subtitles. It helps your brain to learn this word. I know what it looks like, but now I know what this word sounds like when native speakers say it. And that will help your listening skills to improve. All right, so I hope those tips are helpful for you so far. The other thing that I want to say is that in general, listening is something that's really easy to do when you're doing other things. So again, it's something that's really great practice, but I feel like a lot of students don't take advantage of that as much as they could. Anytime you're in the house, cleaning, cooking, anytime you're in a car, driving, I mean, those are all times when you could be listening to something or reading something. All right. So again, those are the easiest ways for you guys to practice your English skills. You should be doing those things all the time, all the time. All right. But now I want to move on to writing and speaking. Okay. Those are a little bit harder skills. They're harder to practice and they're harder to improve as well. That's my experience from working with students, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so first, let me take a pause and any other comments. All right, so I see you guys appreciate the tips. I don't see any questions, okay? But I just want to let you know if you have any questions about reading or about listening, type those in now, okay? Because I can pause and I can answer your questions if you have more questions about how to improve these skills. But now, writing and speaking. First, I just want to say the reason why they're harder is because you, the student, have to produce the words. You have to decide what words to use, which order to put them in, what word comes first, what word comes next, what tense should I use for this verb, which preposition should I use after this verb. When you're writing and you're speaking, you have to make all of those decisions, and that is really hard for an English student. Okay, so yes, these skills are harder to practice and they're harder to improve on, but of course, they're very important skills. So you have to find ways to practice them. All right, so the other thing that's a little bit hard about these skills is they take more time generally. Okay, reading and listening are pretty easy, they're quick. You can spend 5 minutes reading or listening, and then you can put it away. For speaking and writing, you usually need a little bit more time to spend on these skills. All right, so let's talk about writing first. Okay, and with writing remember that one of the biggest benefits of writing is that even though you have to choose all the words and all the tenses and all the grammar, you still get to take your time. Just like when you're reading, you get to choose the pace. You can go as quickly as you want, or you can go as slowly as you want, okay? And you have the same benefit when you're writing. You can take your time. Now, the biggest mistake that I find a lot of students make, first of all, is they don't practice writing at all. There are a lot of students who don't really practice writing. And for some students, that might be okay. Maybe writing is not that important to you. But even if writing or being a good writer in English is not your goal, writing can still help your speaking skills, your listening skills, and your reading skills, okay? So don't ignore it completely. You might not want to spend all of your time practicing writing, but don't ignore it completely. Writing is really good practice, okay? It lets you practice the same things that you practice when you're speaking, except more slowly. You get to take your time. So that's why writing is really good practice. Now, another big mistake that students make with their writing skills is they don't get any feedback from a person who knows English really well, okay? So you can write in English and you can write and write and write. You can write about yourself. You can write about things that you see. You can write about anything. But how do you know that what you wrote is correct? How do you know that the grammar is correct? How do you know that the spelling is correct? How do you know that there aren't better ways to say the things that you tried to say? So there are some students that might use apps. Like I know there's an app called Grammarly, and some of you guys might know that app. So Grammarly and other apps like that, they might give you some corrections and explanations about some basic grammar. But there are some questions that an app just is not going to answer for you. If you don't understand why something works a certain way, if you have more questions about a correction, who's going to answer those questions for you? And if you don't get answers to those questions, how is your grammar going to improve? So one thing that you really got to make sure that you do, if you want to improve your writing skills, you need someone who really understands English writing to give you feedback. You need someone to look at your writing and say, this is really good. That was beautiful. This over here, this needs to be better. You need that kind of feedback if you're really going to improve your writing skills, okay? So don't forget that that's an important part of learning. Sometimes you need help from other people. You can't necessarily learn everything by yourself, all right? Because here's another thing that a lot of students forget. Native English speakers don't learn English all by themselves. So why should you expect to learn English all by yourself? I mean, native English speakers, we learn English at the easiest time in our lives, right? When you're a kid, that's the easiest time to learn a language. Sure, you can learn languages as an adult, but as a kid, that's the easiest time. Even when we learn English or any language as a kid, we still need help. We get help from lots of people who know the language better than us. Our parents, our teachers, other people in our family, other people in our community. We never learn a language all by ourselves. We don't learn a first language all by ourselves, and you should not expect to learn any language all by yourself. You're always going to need help from people who know the language better than you. All right? So for writing and for speaking, which we're going to talk about next, you've got to remember that. All right, guys? So I'm going to check the comments. Jibril, please, any novel that I can get the audio clip. Okay, I'll respond to that later. All right? Now, if you guys have any questions about reading, listening, or writing, okay, you can put those questions in the comments now. okay? And I'll answer those questions. But the last thing I want to talk about today is speaking skills. And this one is the hardest one for students to improve on because it's the hardest one for students to practice, okay? For speaking, it really helps to have someone to talk to. And a lot of students, that's their biggest problem. They don't have anyone to talk to. So that's why speaking practice can be really hard. But if you want to get better at speaking, you have to practice speaking. Okay? Writing, listening, and reading, they'll help you a little bit, but the best way to get better at speaking is speaking. There's no better way to improve your speaking skills. So you've got to find a way to practice that. Now, the biggest benefit of practicing speaking is just like writing, you have to produce all the words. You choose the words, you choose the tense, you choose the order of the words. And here's the other thing. You don't have a lot of time to make those decisions. That is the hardest part about speaking, okay? The hardest part for a lot of students, the reason why they get nervous, the reason why they're not confident is because you have to make a lot of decisions and you don't have a lot of time to make those decisions. So it's a little bit scary and it's very hard to do, okay? But it's gonna force you to think faster. And if you start to think faster, that's another thing that can help you to think in English, okay? If you start to learn how to make those decisions faster, then you will rely less on translating into your native language, all right? So that's why speaking is a great skill to practice, but it's also very challenging to improve that skill, okay? So here is one of the biggest mistakes that I see with speaking skills. First of all, not speaking and expecting your speaking skills to improve. That's not going to happen, okay? A little bit, maybe. Listening, reading, writing, they will help your speaking skills a little bit, but not a lot. Not as much as most students want to improve, okay? So if you really want to improve your speaking skills, you have to practice speaking, okay? Now, the other thing is a lot of students join groups with a whole bunch of other students, and all these students are talking to each other and practicing with each other, but there is no native speaker helping them. There's no teacher helping them. There's no tutor helping them. Just a bunch of students talking to each other. That's another really big mistake, okay? Because if it's just a bunch of students, if there's no teacher, no native speaker to help people correct their mistakes, then you're never going to improve. You're just going to keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again because there's nobody there to tell you that's not the right way to say it. You need to say it like this. Or there's no one there to say, remember we talked about that? What's the right way to say it? You need someone to give you that kind of feedback. Just like with writing, with speaking, you're making all of the decisions, what words to use, what grammar to use, what tense to use. Sometimes you're going to make the wrong choice, okay? And if no one points out the wrong choices that you're making, if no one shows you this is the wrong choice, this is the right choice, you're never going to improve. You're never going to learn anything. You're just going to keep making those same mistakes. And that's not what you want to do. That's just wasting time. If you want to improve, you need someone who's going to stop you and say, let's say that a better way. Let's choose a better word. That's the best way to improve your speaking skills. Now, there's one other thing that I'll say about speaking. There are two things that come up with speaking that don't come up with anything else, okay? None of the other skills. One is pronunciation, okay? Now, if you're not getting help from someone who really understands English, how is your pronunciation going to improve? The other thing is intonation, okay? What syllable do you put emphasis on? What part of the word do you put emphasis on? What part of the sentence do you put emphasis on? If you want to learn those things, you need someone who really understands the language and can show you how to use those things properly, how to pronounce words properly, how to make certain sounds that don't exist or don't happen in your native language. There might be some sounds in English that are completely new to you. If you want to learn how to create those sounds and you're having trouble, you're going to need help from someone. All right? So that's the last thing that I'm going to say about speaking skills. Okay? And just remember, you have to be realistic about what it takes to learn English, okay? And the only reason why I think this is important is because I think a lot of English students expect too much from themselves. They expect that they should be able to become fluent all by themselves because they saw some website online that said they should be able to do it, or they saw some video that said they should be able to become fluent in 3 months. But the video didn't really give you all the details about how to do it or how much time it takes to do that. Okay? So don't have unrealistic expectations. If native speakers need help to Learn English, then you're also gonna need help to learn English, okay? And every native speaker needs help learning English. That's why we all take English classes when we're kids. We learn about the grammar, we practice spelling, we practice our speaking skills, we practice how to tell a story. We practice all of those things in school with teachers who are experienced and know how to teach those things, because learning English, just like learning any language, is really complicated and people don't do it all by themselves. Okay? That is an expectation that I think is completely unrealistic. That myth is out there, that idea is out there that, yeah, you can learn a language all by yourself, but really, everybody needs some help. You have to talk to native speakers if you want to get that good practice with real English, okay? You can't do it all by yourself. And if you don't have access to native speakers, you have to find a teacher or a tutor, because that person can help you just like native speakers can help you. All right, guys? So for today, that is all of the information that I have to share with you. However, we still have some time. We have about 5 minutes. So I'm going to let you guys ask any questions that you want to ask about how to improve your English skills. Okay? There were two students, I believe two students, who asked this question just this week. And they were both intermediate students who were curious about how to become advanced students. Okay, so if you're an intermediate student who wants to become an advanced student, everything that we talked about in today's class is going to be extremely helpful for you. Okay, now if you're a beginner or less experienced, that's okay. All of these tips are still going to be really helpful for you. But my question for you guys now is, what other questions do you want to ask about how to improve your English skills? What other questions do you guys have about how to become fluent in English? Okay, we still have a few minutes, so if there is anything that I didn't answer, there's anything you're still wondering about, now is your time to ask. Okay, and I'm going to look through the comments to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yiro from Sudan, welcome to class. That sounds like a new name. So if this is your first time here, welcome. Sam, I see you. Welcome to class. And let's see, no questions so far. So I'm going to give you guys a couple more minutes. Well, like 1 more minute. Okay. If no one has any more questions, that's fine. We can just end the class here. But if you guys have questions, go ahead and ask, and I'd be happy to answer before class is over. All right. Now, while you guys are thinking about questions, I'm just going to ask you guys to help me out with one thing, and then I'm going to share a little information with you. First of all, if this class was helpful, if any of these tips are useful for you, please give this video a thumbs up. Please give this video a thumbs up. Okay? Number 2, some of you guys here in class didn't mention to me, what is your favorite way of practicing English? So what is your favorite way of practicing English right now? If you like to practice English in a particular way, if there's something that you like to do, some of you guys didn't answer that question. What do you like to do to practice English? All right. Now, the information I'm going to share with you guys, some of you might not know. Ooh, thank you for that thumbs up. Some of you might not know, I have an English club for English students to help you guys study. Okay, so a couple of times a month, I'll send you an email, and it has all the different materials that I have for English students. There might be classes that I taught recently. There might be other videos that I've made. There might be podcast episodes. There might be articles that I wrote for you to read. Okay, all of the things that I create for English students, I send to the students that are in this club. So if you want to join the club, I will post that information as soon as class is done. Okay, another thing, if you're a student who's looking for private classes or small group classes, there is a page on my website that will give you more information about that. Okay, so that link I'll also post as soon as this class is done. If you're curious about the small group classes or the private classes that I teach, you can find the information there. All right, and one more thing. Yes, there is one more thing. Everybody always asks me if I have a YouTube channel. Yes, I have a YouTube channel. All right, and a lot of these classes that I teach on Facebook, I actually post them on YouTube as well. So if you ever want to review an old class, if you forgot something and you want to listen to an explanation again, you can find all of the old classes there. So I'll post all of that information as soon as we finish up class here. I'm going to see if there are any questions that I didn't answer yet. Let's see. And nope, I don't see any questions. All right, so I hope this was really helpful for you guys. If you think of questions later, it's okay to post them here. If you think of a question tomorrow or even next week, you can still post your questions here. Any questions that you have about practicing your reading skills, your writing skills, your speaking skills, or your listening skills. Any questions about that stuff, make sure that you post it here. All right, guys. So, oh wait, one more comment. I just have this is from Euro. So you've been learning English for 2 months, okay? And then Isam, I understand what you said, but for me, difficult to speak. Yes, like I said, it's the hardest skill to improve, Isam. And the reason why it's so hard is the 2 things that I mentioned. One, you have to choose all of the words. You have to choose the tense. You have to make all of these decisions. And you don't have a lot of time to make those decisions. You have to think fast. That's why it's hard, okay? The other thing I think that makes it hard is students who are in the habit of translating from their native language to English instead of thinking in English. That also takes more time when you have to translate back and forth. So that makes it harder to think quickly and to be able to speak quickly. All right. So yeah, Isam, it's really hard. But like I said, there are things that you can do. Listen to the suggestions that I gave when I was talking about practicing speaking skills. And Euro, what can you do? Euro, you can listen to this whole class. That's what you can do, okay? This whole class was about what you can do to improve your skills. So Nobody is allowed to ask me that question anymore. All right. You're not allowed to ask me, how do I improve my English skills? Because I just gave you all of the details for reading, writing, speaking, and listening. If you have more questions, let me know. All right, guys? But until our next class, happy studying. Bye, everyone.